We often think that the strongest of human relationships are built based on what we do for people. But actually, the strongest of human connections are built based on the space we create for people to do something for us. So if you think you're a tough man who cannot be vulnerable, you will never have anyone who will be truly loyal to you.
Welcome back to the Rise Radiate Podcast, where we gather stories of wisdom, of purpose from people who still dare to build without losing themselves in a world that most often than not demands the contrary. I'm your host, Aminata Kane Baldé, and today I have the privilege and the gratitude of having my friend Hamid Marah here with us. Hamid is, I would say, a household name in Sierra Leone when it comes to building systems, to building people and legacy. Hamid is more than meets the eye because most of the time Hamid showcases a lot of humility and wants to build like behind the spotlights. But today we have the privilege of discovering who is behind the name, the titles. There is a lot that we know about Hamid is that Hamid is not doing what he's doing for the fame, but he is doing it for the values that he holds, for the nation that he wants to build, and for the belief in the people of Sierra Leone and the potential that they hold. In this episode of this podcast, where we are going to talk about personal values, about the story of becoming, about all what it takes for us to be contributors, meaningful contributors to building a nation, to rising without losing the people, to building, but at the same time carrying the others with us. We will have the privilege, as I said before, to unpack with Hamid. Hamid, thank you so much for being with us today. Welcome to the Rise Radiate Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I was waiting for you to finish, but yes, thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Yes, Hamid, it's a shared pleasure. Hamid, there is a lot that we know about you, and that's why I said there is more than meets the eye, because as I said, you're someone who likes to build, but at the same time, not always be on the spotlight, but it's an opportunity for us and for our viewers to discover today the Hamid Marah that we don't know. Or what do you think that exists, that is a reality about Hamid Marah that people would learn a lot from discovering today, but that they have no idea about?
Thank you so much. I think that's a very loaded question, but also a difficult one for me because it means I'll have to talk about my self, especially from a perspective of strengths or something people can learn for. I will usually hope that people can just learn organically without me having to say it, but rather just demonstrate something they can learn from. I wish there were people around here who knew me on this interview so I can just pose the question to them and just ask what he had learned from me. Regardless, I'll attempt to answer that question. I think for me, I have foundational principles and values that really guide my life. And I think most times the outcomes that we see in our lives, they're just the final product. But what led to those outcomes usually are the decisions that we make in the inside, right? And so always I make sure I am at peace with my why. You know, a lot of things I have done when I look at the outcome, they may not reflect what I want or what I stand for. But what I can sleep with is when I reflect and ask myself, why did you do it? If my why is always intact, I have always at peace because I know for a fact that the outcome may not always be as desirable, but I have to be sure that at every point I can live with my why. And so then the question becomes what shapes my why? What does my why entail? And I feel everyone I've come across, people who have been around me, people I've crossed path with, if I can pick one thing that I think it benefited from the most or learned from me, is really seeing how I make my decisions to arrive at my why, right? Um, my why is really shaped by what I'll now call my identity. Again, identity is a very complex and I'll say fluid concept because it changes over time. And so perhaps upon reflection, maybe this is why Allah, for example, had to wait until the prophet was 40 years before he can proclaim his prophethood. Perhaps we need at least 4 decades to really learn a lot of things, shape our personality so that we can form what can become our identity, at least for a while. Because I still believe even after 40, our identity may be shaped further and it may adapt over time based on the circumstances. So I'll say for me, the first is my very strong foundation in terms of faith. I think faith has really shaped my identity and therefore my why over time. I was blessed to have parents, especially my dad, who was very passionate about Islam, who basically helped me build a very strong foundation in faith. And that has really led on how I see the world, how I take decisions. That God consciousness has really shaped the things I choose to do or not to do. But I think also what I was privileged to learn from my dad that I always want to pass over is that my dad was a very process oriented. Like he was very intentional. He thinks about everything. He plans everything. My dad is a boy from a Limba village where all his peers and himself growing up, all they do is tap palm wine, for example. But for some reason, it was just different. It was just intentional. He didn't drink palm wine, even though he tapped palm wine in those days. He refused to have the local traditional limba marks or so and everything. And just one day he just left and then said he wants to go to town and then learn his trade. He was learning his trade. He realized that not being educated is a barrier. He started going for night schools. Even though he was Muslim, he was going to the Catholics and the priests for night schools just so he could learn how to read and write, basically to draw his plans because he was a building contractor. So he was very, very intentional. And what I learned about him is that there's no magic in this world. What you put in is most likely what you're going to get out. The only difference between people who are ordinary and extraordinary is that the extraordinary choose to do the extra. And my dad chose to do the extra, and I saw how he was completely different from all his peers, how he rose to a start from somebody who's uneducated to having contracts for the World Bank idea. My dad built many of the schools across Koinadubu and Falaba districts. As a child, I was very fond of following him around and I'll help verify plans or estimates made by some of his contractors. So I go to him to those school sites all the way to the Guinea border in Bentu, Fulamansa, and all of the places I went to with my dad, just watching this man who's virtually uneducated in terms of formal education, but taught himself by going to night schools, how he was breaking the ceiling by just being intentional, how he was winning this idea contract and building schools across that particular region. And so even though my dad had passed when I was really young, like 2 days to my 15th birthday, there was a very solid foundation in terms of how he had shaped my identity and helped me define my why in terms of seeing how being intentional can really pay off, but also in terms of my strong faith. So I feel I thought I knew me better. My world was rocked in ways I never imagined. My mom equally was uneducated and sort from a wife who had a proud husband, they could do everything at for. She became a single mom, having to care for myself, my younger siblings, my extended siblings, and all the people that my dad was caring for. My dad was just taking kids from different villages, bringing them home to teach them his trade, to go to school with us. So we had many extended cousins. some people we're not even related to, whom we grew up with as brothers and sisters. And my mom really loved my dad so much that she embraced everything. Even though she didn't have the means, it was impossible how she was going to do it. She embraced everyone and everything my dad left. It just took over everything. And I think what I learned the most from my mom, and I can say my mom is by far my role model. I learned the the value of sacrifice. I love that if you really sacrifice, sometimes you realize that you have to let go so that you can go up. You have to take some step backward and do things no one ever imagined you would do. My mom came from a very proud Madungo bowl, where I'm sure my grandfather never imagined her daughter doing all the things she had to do, going to the farm and everything when he gave her to my dad to get married to. I mean, he had visited the life of Longshi and everything. And from that woman who grew up in that kind of settings, she embraced everything. She embraced her own struggle because she also was in a home where, I mean, her Bob was not present. She was raised by her stepmom. And I saw this woman struggle. I saw her sacrifice. And, my mom usually would say to me, everything I do is for my kids. And I hope God paid it back on my kids. I did not just witness that population. I witnessed how that sacrifice really paid off. Because I look at myself and I tell myself I am an embodiment of all of my mom's sacrifices. So understanding sacrifices and transitioning from a life of luxury where my dad was around to a life of struggle really also taught me empathy. It made me have an identity of humility, and I approach people with understanding and empathy because I've seen it all. I've seen the highs and lows of life. I've witnessed it all on all extremes. And so I know not how to let it get to my head. I usually say, I know not how to let the light blind me, I never get blinded by the light because I know where I came from. I know my rules. And I feel this sense of intentionality is very strong grounding in faith and God consciousness. This witnessing of sacrifice from a woman and the empathy and humility that it built in me has really shaped too. And so I feel people who feel around me, the one to give learn the most is the value of being intentional, but also being humble in any situation and realizing that life is fungible. Things can change rapidly. And so if you understand that, you know how to empathize with other people, you know how to be genuine to other people, and you know that if you support other people, it comes back to you in tenfold.
Thank you so much, Hamid. I have to tell you that, like, when I meet great people, and this happens to me with various people, including my dad, I'm always curious, like, who's the mom? Like, most of the time when I look at my dad, I'm just like, who is the great woman who was capable of not only being blessed with a person like this as a kid, but being able to raise them this way. But with you, my curiosity has always been like, who's the dad? Because I've met your mom once, and also I've seen what she's doing in the agricultural sector and all. But then I see how you celebrate your dad, your dad's life on social media, and it's still like not knowing him, right? I'm still a very, very, like, the enigma was still in there. But then you breaking it like this makes it so beautiful. And like that intentionality and the capacity of just distinguishing himself from his environment, because most of the time people say we are just the products of our environment. But having that boldness of deciding who you want to be and how you want to behave is just so extraordinary. And yes, that helps us understand the Hamid that we have, because one of the things that I have also realize with you is you have a lot of kids always around you. And we all know they're not necessarily your kids, but you inherited that from that extended family that your dad has been nurturing. That's quite beautiful. Oh, thank you so much for sharing this, Habib. So one thing that we have discussed before, and that we know in our society is a big issue, is how youth have that real difficulty of now finding their own ways and of deciding who they want to be. Like most of the time, it's like you have friends who are meeting at Gigi Gonta and they're smoking shisha and then you smoke shisha, right? Or people are wearing a certain way and you're wearing that way because of peer pressure. So it's absolutely difficult for youth to take different paths from the people who are surrounding them. And that makes it even more real when we talk about purifying your circle, being very intentional around who you surround yourself with. But we do know it's not that easy for that youth that we have. And I know both of us and most of the people in this ecosystem are trying to build that young person that we know, if equipped enough, if raised and built in the way they're supposed to be, can contribute to developing the continent by starting by developing the entrepreneurial ecosystem that is so dear to us. So what do you think the ingredients we need to put in place to bring together for us to build that young person that would be like Mr. Marah, Mr. Your dad?
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to hear that feedback and summary from you. And not to really talk too much about my dad, but I just want to go back to one important aspect. I think my dad was authentically himself. My dad was not somebody who we could put in a box. He was a mystery in so many ways. I usually say Papa that bluff man. Like he was a man that has appetite. For example, my dad at some point took to biking. So imagine this is somebody who grew up in the village, came to town, not has more Western influence, and he just became a biker. So he had this appetite for buying very expensive or strong motorbikes. As a whole, my dad was so good that he could spin with a bike and pick a corn from the floor. That's how good he was with a bike. I remember my mom was always scared, and until my dad had a terrible accident once, and he always had that at his back, and everyone thought he was going to die. That was when he finally stopped biking and riding. But even then, when they stopped, he had this appetite for buying strange cars. Like he would go for strange brands, strong, different cars, like the first of things, and my dad moved from Kabbalah Bruno, the first one to buy maybe a distribution or any or these different cars that he liked. What I learned from that is my dad never really did let anyone put his children in a box. So it gives you the space to try, find your own path and become yourself. I think it with faith. My dad never really like he encouraged me to become Muslim, but he gave me the freedom to really explore and learn. Like I went to Catholic schools and all of that. So I had the freedom to really learn different things and compare. At my early age, I'll go for catechism. Like we had one of my brother's best friend that he brought home, and he became like a big brother to me up to this day. I'll say perhaps one of my strongest academic influence growing up, someone I call a mentor in high school is him. He's now the principal for the secondary school in Kabbalah, Dublin Secondary School. He was a Christian. He was somebody who almost wanted to become a priest, but he lived with us, grew up with us, everything. And my dad was very tolerant and open to something like that. So I think the first thing that we do to our children in our context is to put them in a box. We stick them too much that we don't give them the space, grow and become themselves, to become authentically themselves, right? And I've struggled with that so much because of my background. I don't fit in any box. So wherever I've gone, I've become like a disruptor, or some people feel me was controversial because I've always been this strange person. That's what I know. I don't know how to basically put myself to the box. And I tried once. I tried on my first job and it really backfired. And I realized I have to go back to my roots. I'm humble, I've raised well, but I cannot fit in a box. So in the entrepreneurial world, we have to develop the curiosity of our young people. We have to give them the tools to be as curious as possible. Of course, we can like guided confines, right, of their values and principles they use to make decisions. But we have to give them the tools to open their mind, broaden their scope, and be very curious. I think one aspect I will not miss out on pointing is that I've seen many amazing entrepreneurs or will-be entrepreneurs. I've seen many amazing people, in our context who can be entrepreneurs or even shape the entrepreneurial space. The one disconnects I've seen between what I feel I am and what I think many of them are is the fact that many of them are not grounded in reality and substance. Many of them do it for the hype, for the attention, for the spotlight. And if they can't get it, they do everything possible to make sure it comes to them. Even if it means betraying the people they're working with, even if it means betraying their closest ally, even betraying their best people, even if it means just doing some banal things such as award the credit only to them and cause rifts in ventures they have with other people. They'll stop at nothing just to get the attention. So much that, and I don't judge them. I like to emphasize, and I ask myself, why is this the case? It's like they're just focused on the way we've shaped entrepreneurship is who gets the highest accolade, who gets recognized the most, who gets seen and everything. So many people are only doing it for that recognition. They're only doing it to be seen. And oftentimes, if you go behind the curtains, they go through so much more struggles that they shouldn't have to. Many of them are not drilling down on building the skills that should help them make impactful returns first for themselves, for their families, and for their communities. Many of them are not actually getting the gains they should get. They're just showing up, spending their small resources just for the essence of people just showing up. They're not really realizing motivations. It kills their motivation. It dampens their spirits. It frustrates them. It makes them bitter and angry. And when you're bitter and angry and you're worried, you're not at your best. So I think we also have to take a step back and teach impactful entrepreneurship that starts with first yourself. I always tell people, if you ask me what does success represents for me, it's an intersection of two things. Where I am making enough income to take care of myself, my needs, and everyone around me, and I am creating enough impacts. Where they intersect, that is what joy represents for me. The absence of either of them is confusion, So we have to teach this kind of grounded entrepreneurship that is not based on just showing up or being seen or getting all the accolades, but truly building and becoming very secure. Truly having a strong foundation on which you can stand, being on solid ground. I am one person who truly believe in a lot of solid ground. I do a lot of reading on leadership, and one of the concepts I really like is the concept of solid ground. First, being on a solid ground for yourself. So much that you build the foundation where you can drive engines, you're able to resist tires because they'll always come. But also making sure you're on solid ground with everyone around you. You have people, they will tell you they know almost everyone and almost everyone know them, but they are not on solid ground with anyone. You can hardly find people who want to kill or die for them because they are not on solid ground with anyone. Being on solid ground is very, very critical. It's very, very critical. You may not be all over the place or being all out there, but there are people who can vouch for you. There are people who are willing to kill or die for you. You also have a basis where you can stand and do great things. And this is not just limited to our entrepreneurship. I even look at our leadership space. People in very, very high positions. You happily find those around them who are willing to stake their neck for them. And I often tell people, there's a stark difference between having people in your corner and cornering people. Because oftentimes, when you have influence, you have all the resources, many people come around. But perhaps you're just cornering them because you have things to give them. When everything fades away, those that truly stay because they believe in you, because you've truly influenced them, are the ones you can say you have in your corner. I really want us to teach that kind of entrepreneurship that help us bring together a critical mass of young people who first are authentic, who have the tools and the freedom to be themselves authentically, but also to understand the distance between substantial building and just building bubble, right? And really master the skill of being on solid ground for themselves and with other people so that they're able to truly influence their ecosystems, their communities, and everyone around there.
That is such a fountain of wisdom, Hamid. It's just mind blowing. I relate it and I appreciate it, a lot of it, including the curiosity that we lose so early. like that sparkle in our eye. We just stop being curious because we think we learned enough. So we stop learning, we stop exploring. And it's sad because when we're talking about entrepreneurship, you have to learn every morning, every day that you wake up, every situation, every context, learning and exploring so that you can build even better. I really connected with that. But another very, very solid point that you shared was the intersection between mm, creating wealth and creating impact. And when one is missing, it's confusion. That was just so powerful because at the end of the day, what we really want our entrepreneurs to realize is you doing it for wealth creation, because we are no longer able to build average wealth because it's not only for us, it's for the communities that we need to help build, it's for the systems that we are supposed to build, it's for nation building. So yes, creation of that great wealth, but also at the same time creation of impacts, right? So solving solutions and building wealth at the same time. A lot of nuggets, absolutely great ones that you talked about, the like the solid grounds. And you talked about religious beliefs. You also talked about a family that is grounded in love. So all of those things are things that maybe we overlook, given that most of the families that we see around or are building are fragile, right? They're fragile due to the fact that we forget that love is very sensible. I heard you when you said that your mom loved your dad in that way. Coming from that love is really, really powerful, and we overlook most of those things. Thank you so much, Hamid, for sharing those. And I do believe that if we build our entrepreneurs and our future leaders of the nation around these values, we really will groom people and personalities who have the capacity of bringing um, sustainable development, but also change that that can see us through. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, Also, Hamid, you talked about the hype. You talked about substance, and that was really something that resonated with me because, with the advent of social media, with people raising visibility over building substance and impact, it has just become so difficult even for people to understand that they need to refocus, and then remain deeply rooted in that first passion that drove them into the work they are doing. But I would want us to pivot a little bit and discuss masculinity, and it's really coming from what you shared because you talked um, about like, to me. Sorry, I know your dad was such a, I would say, a sheikh. That's a religious person, but I see him as a joyful person. That's really what I'm saying. Like somebody who would play with the bike in that sense. But then that is so different from what we are sold about masculinity. Right? Men should be always super serious. Um, should not express their own feelings, should not show love, and all of that. But then that is hurting the society. But we having men that I think have masculinity that is hurt, and they are most of the time angry at the rest of the world. And that is the same with femininity, right? Because you would meet women who are just like angry at men, like that's it. All men in one basket, they're all bad and we don't need them, right? The same way we also have masculinity that we were taught, I believe, from our traditions and our cultures, that sometimes we mix with religion and we accuse religion more than even it deserves. But to discuss that masculinity and to ask you like what you did have to unlearn from the society, from the beliefs that we do have, for you to become who you are, deeply rooted in your masculinity, but really very balanced and very healed.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I mean, again, I say this with a great amount of empathy and humility, not to judge other people who may have different struggles and experiences. I was fortunate to have very good kids. I mean, unfortunate that my dad's life was short-lived as we would it. So maybe other people are better off with that sense. But fortunate that I could see a lot of things from him. I feel one of the biggest troubles of masculinity in our societies and perhaps the world over is this idea of strong man. And we see this even with global leadership in other things, we have this perverted perception of what a strong man should be like. So much that men are not capable of formulating it. And I think at the foundation of a very mature, a very firm standing, a very authentic masculinity has to be the ability to accept that it's okay for a man to also be vulnerable. Um, when I really get angry or hurt or pissed, you have to be close to me to know this. It's very easy for me to shed tears. It's very easy. It's very easy. Growing up, a lot of people will perceive this as weakness. A lot of people will think, "Oh, you make that woman, quick, kind woman," Apart from being sexist, it's so wrong. One of the reasons why it never got to me was because and this is not something I'll rather share, but you know, just so people to really understand this, my mom was always very jealous. My mom was very jealous of my dad. And my dad was such a very handsome face, was light skinned. But I'm like in between my mom and my dad because my mom is dark. My dad was really handsome. He was a ladies' man. The face really liked my dad. Um, I remember Cochrane, there was this this woman that really liked my dad back then, and I don't know, my mom got something wrong or so. One of the boys that was working for my dad wanted something of my mom, and then he came with some fake information, like everything. My mom got really angry that day. He attacked my dad and everything, and my dad walked away and he had tears in his eyes. My dad was a man who was capable of vulnerability. But he had a choice. People are choosing to hint my mom or do something or so. But he made that choice. That whenever I also cried that day and my mom really felt guilty and felt bad also. So each time I get those episodes, I think of my dad. I say, "Oh, I'm a true son of my dad. This is not strange. This doesn't make me less than a man. 'Cause the strongest man I know was my dad. And I've seen him shed tears, when he's under pressure. So one of the things I always teach, and which is how you can build a capacity not to break down, is that you have to embrace vulnerability. You really, I'm not saying go out there and be emotional all the time or whatever, but I'm saying even as a man, you have to embrace vulnerability. You have to understand that you have repetition. You have to understand that it's okay for you to cry. It's okay for you to feel disappointed, to feel down. That's quite okay. So one of the myths I always try to demystify when I engage with young people and everyone around me is the fact that because you're a man does not mean it cannot be vulnerable. So that's the first point. Second point is also, we often think that the strongest of human relationships are built based on what we do for people. But actually, the strongest of human connections are built based on the space we create for people to do something for us. People feel the safest with those who can be vulnerable with them, who create space for them to also feel adequate. And this is something I struggle with before a lot. If you feel like you're doing everything for everyone, anything that makes you Superman, people don't get connected to you because it makes them feel inadequate. They also want some opportunity to do something for you. They also want to feel human, see that you also have struggles that they can relate with and they can help you with. So I'm not saying you should fake it, or your ability to open up to people closest to you so they can also see your down moments and you give them space to also help and come through for you. It's the surest way to build the strongest of bonds with people. So if you truly want to build concrete relationship and have people who are ready to do everything for you, they also have to feel that you're capable of being vulnerable with them. So if you think you're a tough man who cannot be vulnerable, you will never have anyone who will be truly loyal to you. Because loyalty most times built at that moment, people can see you break down also. They can also see your moments of humanity, and they feel they're the ones who can come through for you. They also need to feel that you also need them. I'm not saying be needy, but if you do need people sometimes, don't shut it. No, open up and be vulnerable as well. And I feel masculinity should come with a consciousness and awareness of being in charge of situations, being in control of yourself first and foremost, not in control of people. To control people, aside to be in control of themselves. I'll give you an example. A man who has been brainwashed with this flawed notion of masculinity, when they have a conflict with a woman, for example, they would try their best to overpower that woman. It's every means they have, whether it's denying them to give them money they used to give them, whether it's either blackmailing them, getting them fired, or using any kind of means to punish them so they get compliant. And that is the way they feel they can achieve masculinity, being an alpha male and then being in charge. But that is misconstrued. What an alpha male and a truly masculine man will do is, okay, that's your choice. Well, that's fine. I'll let you be. If you decide otherwise, we'll see how we can talk about this. And then you are in charge of your emotions so you don't overreact. And again, I'm not saying any of us are perfect. It's a learning process. I mean, we've all had our bad times, but we should learn from them and take a firm decision, When you get to a point where you can control your emotions and your reaction, and you're able to walk away and let people realize and basically commit rather than complied, that is when you can truly say you are masculine. Because first and foremost, you are in charge of your own emotions and in control of yourself. Otherwise, you just see any problem as a nail. You just, like, armor becomes the only tool in your locker box. You have to beat all the time because you cannot control yourself first and foremost. When you can really control your emotion, you become truly masculine. Now, that comes with responsibility as well. You realize that being masculine is truly being in charge and having the ability to really sacrifice and take care of those under your care. I always say it's very important to care for ourselves, but what is even more important is to care for those under our care. If anyone understands this, then you can truly say you're masculine and you're a leader. Because no matter where you find yourself at home, you realize it's even more important to take care of your family. You find yourself in the office where you're leading, you realize it's even more important to take care of your team. You find yourself in governance, you realize it's even more important to take care of your people. What we see is the reverse. We see men who think they're masculine, but all they do is take care of themselves, enrich themselves, do everything that gives them security because they have so much insecurity that is insatiable. They do everything just for themselves. And they forget that true masculinity is really the ability to first be in charge of your own emotion and yourself and taking care of those under your care. We used to see this in the olden ages. Our forefathers, they will do anything, even if it makes paying ultimate price with their lives to take care of their home, to take care of those under their care. And from my perspective, I think that's what true masculinity really means. I don't want to set anyone up for failure. I have to say it's a learning process. Along the way, you get hurt. Along the way, you face a lot of sticks. You also have to give yourself a chance to heal. And this is where your ability to be vulnerable comes in. There's one thing I don't like talking about usually, but I've had a failure in my age. And I always say it's my biggest failure in life. But it's also the failure that has taught me the most in that, especially when it comes to what it truly means to be masculine and to be a man. And many people go through similar struggles or even worse, but they let themselves sink and swim in that pain and hurt because they've been sold this flawed version of masculinity, and so they never allow themselves any chance to heal. And so you keep going deep and deep into the brokenness until you become a completely broken man. You become an angry man, you become a bitter man, you become a man who just wants to use power to solve every problem, wants to use your will, your fist to solve any problem. Failing to realize that what you really need is to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to heal, and to be in charge and in control of your own emotions first and foremost.
Oh my God, Hamid, you said it all. In fact, and I think I'm very happy because I'm a woman hearing a man saying all of these things, and like the reason why I'm happy is men will hear all this, because when we talk about the need to build security, When anybody you call insecure just becomes defensive, But I think it's like it's because we point finger to the others. We all have our insecurities, but then revisiting them and trying to heal them or to nurture, you know. All of those things, like the point that you raise around weakening the other party, like the woman, because you want to feel big. It's like being the mighty king of a weak kingdom where everybody's weak, you are the only mighty one. I don't see even the pleasure it would procure. But you talked about balancing it. You talked about managing the anger, because I think also for us, most of us are guilty of that. We tell our kids that, "Oh, don't be mad," like, okay, leave it. Like, we suppress a lot of the the emotions that our boys come with, to the point where all they know is how to suppress rather than channel, and that is absolutely amazing. um i I think the learnings are just so great. The fact of empowering the people that we are living in the spouse, or for example. And you also told the story of your between your mom and dad, and it reminded me of a story between my husband and myself. I know he never gave me the authorization of sharing this, but I feel like um in 2019 we had our biggest crisis, and it came from me being in entrepreneurship and just like being always called for, and being from the beginning to the end of my business, and him being a 9 to 5, all coming back to home and taking his phone, putting it into the into the cupboard, because he's a family man. He now wants to be with his family. But in 2019, I felt like this is gonna fail. But at a certain point, he had, I think, the power and the humility of just deciding that we are gonna build this. I'm gonna take the reins of my marriage and of my family in my hands and rebuild. That, I think, that's the most powerful thing that I have seen him do. And there is something similar to the story of your parents, because I remember I came from Senegal, and I decided to come back overnight to Sierra Leone after Ebola. And nobody knew real. I still don't know the reason why I came back, because he was here. I just decided I'm going back. And then people started telling me that while I was away, women were around, this and that. And then at night, I brought the story. And what he did was he was laying down on the bed. He sat up and faced me, like he created the space for us to discuss it, but made sure that he got me. He made me understand how much that was so false, but how much he valued me and our relationship. And I think that's the time I had the greatest respect from him. Not when he was either shouting, screaming, providing, or anything, but then when he realized that this woman is about to hurt herself, and because I value her, let me swallow my pride, instead of saying, "That's a lie, where did you take it from? Let me take care of her." So those are things I think we need to celebrate more, so that the new generation, the younger generation, hears those and understands how valuable it is. Um, because it's real that we're coming from different planets, right, men and women. But then making the effort of understanding the other one, of knowing that at this point, if I don't take action, if I don't apply what is needful, I'm gonna hurt or I'm gonna lose, rather than just focusing on your own hurt is just so powerful. This is such a wealth of wisdom that you have shared with us, Hamid. I'm so grateful for this, and I'm all the more grateful that I do know that it will spread. That these youth will hear about it, and understand that maybe the tools that they were sold is not the reality. And that as the description of the Prophet ﷺ goes, you build with your hand and your heart. It's not always, because as you were saying, we've seen him weeping many, many times. We've seen him playing with his spouses, racing. And the word I was looking for when I was describing your dad was not joyful, it was playful. But if you're talking about a dad who's playful, you're disrespecting the person. But come on, for Muslims, for example, but your prophet was playful. So just making sure that we build around those values that uplift generosity, that uplift building each other, but also being vulnerable with each other as masculine traits. So I really appreciate that sharing, Hamid. And now I would want us to move to another angle of the conversation that I know you were really passionate about, and you've been very open about it, which is us navigating systems that are not built for us, but also finding ourselves, in settings, in the type of leadership that we did not necessarily choose, and also being in settings where funding, where policy, and even the incapacity of trusting the existing is such a challenge for us entrepreneurs, ecosystem builders, and all. But we still have to remain in those settings, in those ecosystems, and try to build. Like, how do you read that complicated, very complex situation that we are finding ourselves, and how can we build without hurting ourselves in this context?
Well, thank you so much. I'll say this question becomes even more pertinent considering the current global climate. Uh, um, a year ago, almost a year ago, I was going to, I think, a year and a half, about a year or a year ago, I was going to the Massicoff's Global Next Generation Leadership Program, which is really a very prestigious leadership program in the development world. By the way, this is something I never said anything about, so perhaps now it's time I might share some of that because I went through that leadership program successfully and graduated as a member of the cohort V, which is like the fifth cohort of the program. As part of the program, there were core fundamental things that you would do. One of them was, of course, you are assigned a very experienced coach. Who can help you to your journey. And of course, you do all of the highest standards of personality tests so you understand yourself better. But in particular, you will do a project called a capstone. So you do your capstone project, you choose a topic that you will research and that is very, very relevant. So the topic I chose was basically how to build partnership driven localization. So basically, and it's as if I felt something was going to change in the sector or in the world. Because under that capstone project, I researched the entry points for localization. I researched the alternatives for building from within. And a year after that, when the sector was rocked, the pullout of USAID, for example, so we're left with mostly localization and other limited options. So I think building systems becomes even more pertinent now that since the world is going to move more towards that spectrum of limited falling support. But even if there's any falling support, they will be directed likely so towards building local systems, right? So how do we then enter those spaces? How do we survive? How do we thrive? How do we in fact also build our own systems? First, I would like to talk about the entry points. I have seen many attempts at localization, and believe you me, you can hardly find a big fan of localization than I am. Like localization in its truest sense, to the point that I am even one person that often don't get angry or defensive when I see other countries becoming nationalistic or localized. I'm not saying I'm in favor of all of those decisions, but sometimes I hear, for example, Americans would say they want America only for America. And I don't think like a Sierra Leonean. I ask myself, what if I was typical America who is not exposed to anything? I was just in America. I would like it. If I'm thinking just like an American, what will be my take? What this helped me do is it makes me realize what we also need to do as Sierra Leoneans and as Africans, right? And this is why I don't have a defensive approach to localization. Rather, I realize what we all need to do in our own context. Right? That's the first point for me that is very critical. The other point why this question is very relevant is also there is a wave of Pan-Africanism in our societies. And I am particularly worried that many people who are even promoting Pan-Africanism don't truly understand the essence of Pan-Africanism. And and I'm not blaming that because other forms of leadership are really fail cause. But people are even dangerously equating Pan-Africanism to revolutions, to military rule, to coups or other things. I can see why, but that's not what it is. Africanism truly is the understanding and desire to build from within, to build for ourselves, to have each other, to support each other without necessarily closing ourselves to the rest of the world. I was in South Africa by the end of last year at the Global Annual Market Systems and Symposium, and I joined different panels, but then I was just summoned impromptu to join the localization panel. And one of the things I said is no country can ever be truly localized. No, no, not even the greatest nations. Because you are going to need something from someone, and you need not necessarily be truly localized. That is not the objective. Localization is a spectrum. You have to decide where on the spectrum you want to. And I'll say in Africa, what we want to be is to have mostly things made in Sierra Leone or assembled in Sierra Leone at best. We have, and these are the entry points. We have objectives that are determined by Sierra Leoneans, developed by us. To stop sometimes what we get is just programs that have been designed by someone and we're constrained to implement based on those designs. You think you're shaping things, you're consulting, or you have a limit within which you can shape and conform because the key objective or indicators are already been decided and shaped by someone before they are handed to you. So an entry point in terms of how we co-create from the very beginning so that we take the lead in developing things. Entry point in terms of building a critical mass of local experts who can be in charge in high executive positions across these programs or even international organizations that are localized so that we're able to make decisions that are from within and for within and supporting and enabling our own values. But also having local champions in terms of how we control the narrative, how we write reports, the kind of outputs that come out, how we even write proposals, how we even advocate for fund, what kind of funding we're chasing and for why, without having notes that may not be adapted to our context, but we're forced to take it because it's who gives basically the fiber, plays the music or whatever the saying goes. So those key entry points are things we cannot lose sight of, otherwise we will never have localization that is truly Pan-African. No matter what we do, no matter what kind of regime we have, we can have all the military regimes that we want. They are still going to take a plane ticket to run to Russia or China and ask them, what do we do? And China and Russia are going to give them a proposal of what to do. It is never truly localization. It's not enabling. It doesn't have a strong foundation. It is not co-creation. And it doesn't set a pathway for us to move from dependency to full independence. That's the first aspect. The second aspect is I struggle to see how committed we are to building systems. And this is not just blaming government. Let's start with we the people. What are the things that gets us excited? I'll give you an example. And I don't want your podcast to be political. So this is purely my opinion, not yours. We have struggled for the longest time when it comes to energy in the country. Right? We have a whole country where there has been a lot of investment in the energy sector. Yet to date, our energy fate in the moment sits in a ship that is owned by a foreigner in our waters. If they choose to pull out, we sleep in darkness. That's our reality. And suddenly, we had of funding from Japan or so, and we're celebrating able growth. I get it. It's good to celebrate the small wins. It's good to be excited when something good happens amidst all the terrible things that are happening. But it's far from enough. It also worries me because I ask, do we recognize that what's more valuable is building systems and not is piecemeal things? Are we still at that point where a government can only appease us by their ability to get funding from donors? And we don't ask critical questions of where is this funding going to go? What kind of systems is it going to build? What kind of foundation is it going to be? Because Reality check. There has been more fundings in 20 folds, more than that 20 million if that was what was rumored. There has been more fundings like cumulative in 20 folds, if not more. Mine's in the same sector. In the same sector. You know, and just to be clear, let's say folds to be to the tune of 2, 3, or 400 billion or so. It accumulates all the energy projects in the country over the last decade or so. They could be around that or way more than that, right? You gotta ask yourself, what are the foundations that we have built? What are the systems we have in place? So much that at this very moment, if a ship in our waters owned by foreigners does not give us energy, we sleep in darkness. So if us, the citizen, are not applauding or getting excited by foundational systems, rather we're getting excited by symptoms. We're getting excited by one-off piecemeal things that are being given to us. What we're doing is we're reinforcing a culture of our leaders chasing those things that get us excited. So they want to stay in power, they want to appease us. So they're going to give us the things that really appease us. We have to get to a point where we start asking ourselves, what are we building? Is it sustainable? How do we plan to sustain it? We have to ask ourselves at this point where foreign governments are pulling out funds and things that are happening. What is our government's strategy to generate income locally without burdening us with taxes, without basically introducing austerity measures that do not extend to them? Austerity measures that really basically extend to the people, but when it comes to government spending, they're not demonstrating any form of fiscal discipline, any discipline in how they spend, any discipline in how they are traveling or do other things. But the only measures where they generate income is increasing taxes or other things, which is burdening the people. We have to ask, what is the government strategy? So basically ignites true productivity. Like when I say true productivity, I'm not talking projects where they show you people are harvesting a little bit of rice or whatever is really excited. 3 months later, you go there, there's no system in place that they've built. We have to generate systems that help us build real, sustained productivity. And we need to start thinking small first. Maybe sometimes also with fairness to governments, perhaps we're trying to take on everything and we become overwhelmed, we stretch thin, and so none of them has solid foundation. We pick one sector. If they ask you as a Sierra Leonean, what is Sierra Leone known for? You will struggle to answer. What are we known for? What are we known for? What are we known for? Go to the Gambia, you ask what they're known for. They're known for tourism. You go to Ivory Coast, they'll tell you they're not for exporting and 3 course, ashiwo, cocoa, whatever blessing. Right now, I'm not talking history. What are we known for? All the terrible things that I don't want to name because I don't want them on record here. We have to be known for certain things. We have to pick a niche. We have to pick somewhere where we have a competitive advantage and start bearing down on those one after the other. Perfect one, and use that example as a model to replicate in other areas. We have to drill down. We have to build systems. There's no talking about building systems if we're not practicing it. It pains me, but I now move around to different countries and I work with different people and I see certain systems gaining roots. And I ask myself, why are we not doing this in this region? Why? What is wrong? And I equally feel guilty, and that is why along with it, I'm always going to find my way to get back to Sierra Leone and see how I can have my own footprints there in a more strategic way. Yes, there are things that I'm proud of. I don't think they're enough. They're not close to enough. And I really like to have my footprint in a more strategic way, in a way that is very systemic and sustainable, that builds a system. But we first have to have a systems mind, a mind that does not just, yes, I'm a positive person, by all means, applaud the small ways, but get excited more about the foundations of a system, about a foundation that signifies a trajectory that will be sustainable over time. When we have that mindset shift, it means we can start holding our leaders accountable in a different way. But it also means there will be pressure on the system to start building. And this comes with patience as well. I am to say this. If we only want the short-term wins and gains, it means we are also allowing time to build. You see, things can be painful, but I know Sierra Leoneans for very patient people. It risks the two sides. Because again, even if you don't get the result you desire overnight, see the signs.
Absolutely.
But worry about Sierra Leone is we're not seeing the signs. We're not seeing the trajectory. We are not perceiving it. We're not feeling like, oh, it's just a matter of time. The good things are going to catch up with us. We just see the package. We just hear the package. We just hear the stories and everything, but it's not being felt in the lives of the average Sierra Leonean. So I think one final point is that in order for us to build systems, especially for marginalized groups or smaller groups, or let's say with me, for example, it's always good to form a critical mass. It's good to form a caucus, form a group of people who can reinforce each other's effort so that the system can begin to gain roots. And then over time, you see that you gradually start influencing norms, practices, behavior, and that systemic approach becomes the normal. You know, we just need a few examples who can demonstrate that they can build fake systemically, and we start pointing at those few examples. And before you know, hopefully we can change the mentality, but as well as the norms and the practices as well around us. And the beauty now is we are in the digital age. We're able to English share the results of those best practices as well as those results. What is sad though, right now, what we're sharing mostly are results of packaged, superficial gains that don't have any roots. So we don't want that to become the norm. We want to become the norm are people who set changes that we can propagate and push for over time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hamid. That was really deep, and we felt the passion. We even felt the pain, of really yearning for your country and knowing the potential, the possibility, but not being able to witness yet the realization of all of that. But you've talked a lot about positivity, about optimism, and that is something that we never should lose, because the potential is real. I do appreciate that you talk about energy. This morning in a training for youth for migrant returnees, I was discussing the issue of energy scarcity in Sierra Leone, and I was like, within that room we could have the solution to energy if we gave the innovative space to youth, and we told them to come up with innovative ideas to solve it. There are a lot of ways we can, call all of those parts of the populations and give them the floor and allow them to express what they have in terms of solutions, in terms of ways out. And it's not only in the energy system. And we usually also say that you cannot be a sovereign country if you cannot feed your people. But the same goes for energy. You cannot be a sovereign country if you cannot light up the lives of your people at night. Because sometimes, especially when maybe for the middle class, you can afford to have either a generator or maybe a solar system, but you see everything around you is pitch dark, and you start now questioning yourself, and the pain becomes even more real. So but again, as we are telling the entrepreneurs, it's not only a problem, it's an opportunity. And hopefully soon we'll have those youth who will emerge with those amazing solutions. I also appreciate the fact that you talked about like being recognized for one thing, one sector, one blueprint. And I also appreciate that you mentioned tourism. Yesterday we were coming from like Freetown Street, and then we just turned and we saw the sea, and I was like, this is the most breathtaking city that I've ever seen. Freetown is the most beautiful place, with the sea being everywhere, with the landscape, the sea, the um the mountains, the best or the most beautiful uh, um, beaches that you can have. Like, how many miles of a beach within the city? There are a lot of gems. It's so amazingly beautiful, but we don't see it. But also, we as the population, we also damage a lot of that gem that we have. But tourism is one of the sectors that, if boosted, could just get the Sierra Leone to a level that is high, more superior to even the Pacific Islands. But we are just not intentional about it. We also talk about, if we take the agricultural sector, with the amount of water that falls in here. I'm from Senegal, and I think we have 2 months of rain. like real rain, 2 months. And if it really rains, we are in trouble. That because of the floodings, because of everything. So it's kind of a very, very dry place. But then seeing Sierra Leone being blessed with so much water, and the water once again can be a source of energy, right? But at the same time can be even stored for dry season. There is a lot that can be done. And the pain, like to me, the pain of seeing all that being wasted is what really um I cannot I cannot keep on dealing with. And my only hope is that we all will be able to create those platforms, those spaces that will allow the youth, that will allow expertise to be revealed, so that solutions can be brought to those great problems that we have, but also the great potentialities. The potential that Sierra Leone had can be now unlocked and be revealed to the rest of the world and be utilized to develop sustainably Sierra Leone. Yes, Hamid, this was such an amazing discussion. Um, I cannot say which one of the parts of the discussion I really appreciated the most, because all of them come together to build the individual, the systems, the resources that we do need for us to bring about a Sierra Leone and Africa that we do need and that we are yearning for. And you mentioned also being abroad, not being in the country, and that is another way of also serving from afar, because most of the time staying in the country is not the best way of helping, because yes, you've served a lot, especially in your bias sector, which is the agriculture. You've helped a lot in building systems, in bringing access to finance, in mentoring the youth, in a lot of areas. I and my programs and organization being one of those. So it is but natural, and I think very useful for individuals like you to also embrace the world, be porous to the world, as Leopold Sedar Senghor was saying, so that we can now take all of that, all of those resources and perspectives back to the country. Thank you so much, Hamid, for this amazing, very deep, authentic conversation that we had with you. And I'm certain, I'm not even hoping, I'm certain you will come back on the Rise and Radiate podcast. Thank you so much, Hamid, for being with us. I appreciate
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everything that you do. I mean, it's this conversation has been about me, but I wish I was the one hosting you instead, because I feel having witnessed your journey and seen it alone, there's just a whole lot you yourself can share, or we can talk about, as we've seen today. I think what I like, this is a more of a dialogue, and so I like that, because also there's a lot that you have done, and that can resonate, or also to get bounce back and share. And I just want to conclude by saying I really hope we're all able to spread this light, spread this influence, and get all people who are not just creating impact, but they're intentional about it, and they're very genuine. Their why is coming from a good place. Their why is very, very concrete. Yes, I'm not saying if you're somebody who like attention, you shouldn't get it. I'm not simply because somebody like a spotlight, you should not get it. But always remember that it shouldn't be about the spotlight. I've had a friend who once we went on a walk trip for the first time, and he discovered how much I could do, and was like, wow, is this how good you are? Why don't you have this on LinkedIn? Why don't you have this? Why don't you have, what is that? Like, first, I don't even have the time. And secondly, most time, if you see me even giving an update, it could be in retrospect. That's an update for maybe long ago. Because when I'm really in the moment and busy, I don't even remember to do that. So perhaps few months down the line, I become free sometime. I'm like, okay, let me just speak about this. But it's also because the joy I get is not just from being recognized for it. No, there's a lot of things that's happened in the background. I'm seeing there are a lot of things where I have my fingerprints a little bit from the beginning and everything. I don't want anyone to even know. I just want to see them thrive from a distance and just smile and just be happy just how much impact they're creating and how much good work they're doing. If we all approach our work with that level of intentionality, yes, We cannot be perfect. No one is, But with that level of intentionality and genuineness, we will create impact both silently and publicly. And when all of these silent impacts starts coming together, it forms an ecosystem. It forms development. It basically forms the foundation of a sustained development that will go over time. But if we all just chase spotlights and chase superficial things, we think we're building, we think we're moving forwards, like just a bubble. And just a matter of time before that bubble gets forced. Hopefully, we start building substantially. We start building concrete foundations. We start building with intentionally, with genuineness, and we get to a point where we become a community in concurrency that is sustainable by the grace of God.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Hamid, for leaving me with optimism. For also giving us that great picture, but also the hope. And thank you so much for being that role model for the youth, because we are a nation, we are a continent, we are a generation that lacks that role modeling. People who are out there who are building for the sake of building the nation, who believe in the nation, who believe in the potential, and who are investing all what they got for it to happen. Thank you so much. You are really appreciated by your population, by the youth, by us ecosystem builders, and especially by people who are in the agricultural sector, because you've done tremendous work. Thank you so much, Hamid, for all of that. And until next time, keep rising, keep radiating, keep being authentic, keep believing in Sierra Leone, in its potential, and keep building.